The Third Man concludes with one of the most memorable final shots in movie history. Its creation was a matter of controversy among otherwise genial collaborators. Amazingly, it was Graham Greene, the author, who wanted an upbeat ending, in which Anna, at the last moment, acknowledges Holly and they walk off together arm in arm. Now, despite depicting Holly as a rube, Greene felt the ending represented a symbolic union of America and Europe, and that the oppressively dark tale benefited from at least a slight suggestion of hope. Opposing him were director Carol Reed and both producers, Alexander Korda and David O. Selznick, who always felt Anna's dismissal of Holly was the fittingly downbeat note on which to end. Selznick argued that the whole point of Anna's character is that she's the victim of a fatal love, and to contradict this in the last few seconds would be a grave mistake. And once Greene saw the finished film, he admitted he'd been wrong, saying, "I had not given enough credit to the mastery of Reed's direction," and he called the ending triumphantly right. Now, just as an aside, that famous final shot was the only thing in the film not photographed by DP Robert Krasker. The cameraman that day was Hans Schneeberger, pinch hitting for Krasker. And I hope Hans at least got a nice dinner out of his colleague, since that's the single most famous image in Krasker's long resume. The ending is also aided immeasurably by the score, composed by Anton Karas on a single instrument, the zither. Carol Reed was scouting locations for the film when he heard the zither as background music in a Vienna tavern, played by Karas himself. The 43-year-old was essentially a street musician, living hand to mouth. Reed hired him on the spot to do the score, despite Karas having never composed music. In fact, the native Austrian was reluctant about the whole thing and feared he couldn't do it. Well, Reed brought him to England and essentially held Karas hostage until he'd produced enough music, including the essential main theme. It was not only an inspired creative choice by the director, it was a life-changing moment for the musician. The Third Man theme became an international hit, and it took Karas on a decade-long itinerary of live shows, from command performances for the British royal family to concert hall recitals all over the world, all of which the shy and homesick Austrian hated. Fortunately, it earned him enough money that he could return to Vienna, buy his own tavern, and never travel again. As for Orson Welles' contributions beyond the charismatic performance, some were inspired, some annoyed the director. It's well known that Welles ad-libbed, at Reed's request, the cynical cuckoo clock bit on the Ferris wheel. That moment is the philosophical heart of the story, and one of the most brilliant scenes in any movie ever. But Welles grew frustrated and filthy shooting the climactic chase scene in the actual sewers of Vienna. He refused to do inserts and reshoots. The sewers had to be recreated at considerable expense on studio sets back in England. Graham Greene acknowledged that Reed's film is better than his novella, an admission made easier by the story having been conceived as a film, not as a screen adaptation of one of his literary works, as was the case with This Gun for Hire, Ministry of Fear, and Brighton Rock. Greene was not a fan of any of those films. You can decide for yourself about Brighton Rock, which I'll be showing on Noir Alley later this year. Hint, it's really good. As always, give us your feedback on the Noir Alley Facebook page or Twitter feed. We'll be staying on this side of the Atlantic for next week's show, making the jump from Vienna to Algiers for the 1937 French film Pepe le Moko, which made a global star of actor Jean Gabin. Now, if you don't like reading subtitles, get over it. Fatalistic noir meets poetic realism in the sinister and sexy Casbah, and it's a beautiful thing. So lay in some French bread, a runny wedge of brie, and a nice bottle of Bordeaux, and join me back here next week. Jusque là, mes amis.